Guess who got brands talking? Brandlife.co.za. A very good morning. It is March the 21st, 2018, Human Rights Day. Happy Human Rights Day wherever you are on Brand Live online radio land. My name is Erald Fillex, and this is the program Green4Life, geared towards matters of environmental interest. Now, as I said, today is, besides Human Rights Day, it is also International Day of the Forests. Now, that is very interesting. Why would one celebrate our forests? And something that just came to mind when you think of the planet Earth and you see the blue sea and you see the continents. All of that beautiful green color, those are our natural forests. Something else of interest in terms of space is the fact that Johannesburg has always been touted as the largest man-made forest visible from space. On the other hand, when we're talking natural forests around the world, our equatorial forest specifically, we're talking man-made forests. You also may have seen dotted all around our country, especially if you're a traveler by road, are all of these planted forests, usually pines, eucalyptus, etc. And these forests have, in the past, always been controlled. You may have heard names like SAFCAL, the South African Forestry Company Limited. You may have heard names like Mondi, and of course SAPI. And today we're very fortunate to have a representative of SAPI. I'd like to welcome Dr. David Everard, who is the Divisional Environmental Manager of SAPI Forests. Good morning, Dr. Everard.
Good morning, Erald, and good morning to all your listeners.
Dr. Erald, why would you say is it important to celebrate or even dedicate a day to forests?
Well, forests actually at present cover at least 30% of the land surface of the earth. So they're the dominant vegetation type. But forests and the trees that they contain, first of all, produce many, many products that humans use. If you just look around wherever you are, if you're in a house, there must be a lot of wood products, your furniture, the door frames, the roof is normally held up by wood. So wood is an extremely versatile and important product that we use. But not only that, across most of the world where people are less rich, they use wood as their main source of energy, so to cook food and to keep houses warm. So forest products, from that point of view, extremely important.
Yes, that's because that's really that's really the first thing when you leave your house or your hut, if it's in very poor communities, as you mentioned, that is the first thing that you see. It is the natural vegetation, and that is then what you use, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. The resources around you is exactly what you use, and the trees and forests are very versatile at that. Also food. A lot of food comes from forests. A lot of our fruit we eat are forest products.
Now, just taking that to another level, you are part of SAPI, and here we are talking about planted forests, which is slightly different. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, planted forests, we call them plantations or tree farms, just to distinguish from indigenous or natural forests. But they have a very interesting history. They were planted from the early times when settlers came into this country, the white settlers, and were using up the natural forests, and they realized that because South Africa and Southern Africa have not a great deal of or big resource of natural forests, they started planting trees to supplement these products. So plantations have been planted up. There was a lot of planting up in the mid-1990s, and we have now reached the kind of sustainable level. We can't expand any more in this country because of water restrictions and land restrictions and those sort of things. But these planted forests or plantations produce many, many important products that we use, and they're used for all sorts of products in this country and worldwide.
Name us a couple of those things that listeners or the ordinary person might not think about on a daily basis.
Okay, so a lot of the sawn timber that we use is out of plantations, but more importantly, pulp and paper. So just about all the paper we use in this country comes from planted forests or plantations. And then there's a whole range of other products that we get from what we term dissolving wood pulp. It's a chemical process where they refine the fibers even more, and those get processed into products like clothing. Viscose is a very important cloth or textile that's used around the world, produced from trees. But a lot of chemicals. So people would be surprised to hear that these chemicals or fibers come into foodstuffs and into some of the medicines we take. So they're actually everywhere.
Now, of late, obviously, looking at sustainability being the buzzword, there's been all the move towards more greener lifestyles. People are talking about paperless society. Are our planted forests, or is forestry under threat?
Forestry is actually not under threat because, wood around the world is one of the more common traded, I think it's about the third most common traded resource. So wood is extremely important for all these products we've been talking about, and planted forests are actually becoming more and more important to produce the materials we need. So they're producing a higher and higher percentage of the product rather than getting them from the dwindling natural forests across the world. So actually plantation forests across the world are expanding and not under threat.
Now, one of the major criticisms, especially in the past, against planted forests has been the fact that they appear to be sort of sterile environments where nothing much else can exist. Has that changed?
Well, it hasn't changed as such. Planted forests, especially if we're considering the South African landscape, where these plantations or planted forests were planted up into grasslands. So we've changed the nature of the landscape from a grass-dominated landscape to a forest or a tree-dominated landscape. Now, if you look at the scale of the stand of trees, that's been a drastic change. And in the stand of trees, so under the canopy of the stand of a single species of trees, I won't say it's sterile. I mean, all the processes are going on, but it's just like another planted crop. But if you look at the scale of these that are planted in the landscape, not every inch of land is planted. And in South Africa, we can generally plant up about 65 to 70% of the land that is available. And the other 30% or 35% is maintained for conservation purposes. So if you look at it at a broader scale, these plantations as a larger landscape, and I'm beginning to call them a plantation ecosystem, are actually full of wildlife. We do monitor birds, we monitor mammals, and we still are astounded by the variety and number of species that exist in these plantations.
And there are obviously a number of projects that you guys have. I remember there was a specific owl project where this owl occurred within the forestry area. What kind of projects is Happy currently busy with?
We do have a number of projects on specific species. So from a bird point of view, the owl project was years ago, where we were looking at nest boxes and things. And in fact, owls and other raptors are extremely important as pest control agents. So if you put up perches, they keep the rats and mice away so that they stop eating the seedlings. But at present, we have other projects. From the landscape point of view, I think listeners would be interested to know that over the last 3 or 5 years, we've declared 6 nature reserves on Sappi land. We have projects looking at butterflies, so looking after specific habitats for instance, the Karkloof blue butterfly, which is an extremely rare endemic. And then we have tree planting projects where we encourage people to plant indigenous trees, and a very big project at the moment on the pepperbark tree, Warburgia salutaris.
That's very interesting. Is that really a case of mitigating the negative impacts? Because I also believe that the Warburgia might be the most poached natural tree at the moment. Indigenous.
I wouldn't say it's mitigating the impact of forestry. Warburgia is an extremely important tree to local communities. It's a medicinal tree, and the bark and the leaves are extensively used. So what's happened over the last, I guess, 100 years or more is it's been used to exhaustion. So it's almost extinct in Swaziland, in Zimbabwe. It's very rare in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, and extremely rare in KwaZulu-Natal because of overuse. And in fact, in the Kruger National Park, the trees there, each tree or each clump of trees has an armed guard to keep poachers away from coming in and collecting the bark. So technically they're more protected than the rhino are.
So one would then assume that you'd have quite a bit of an interaction with your neighbors, a kind of living in harmony with, and a kind of educational program going with people living around your forests.
Absolutely. In the last 5 or so years, we've really made an important transition, I think, and that's a personal view, in Sappi and in forestry, where we don't talk about the community out there. We talk about our community. We're part of the community and want to be part of the community. So we have programs where we work in partnership with the communities to look at what their needs are and what our needs are, and try and work out programs and work together so that we can all live in harmony. So the Warburgia project is part of that, where if we can grow, and we've done a lot of propagation of this tree, we give them out to communities so that they can grow them and use them, and it's a joint project. But we have many other projects with communities where we look at what resources the community has, and then we help them to use their resources and develop programs, projects, businesses, and it is really working very well.
One of the themes of the past couple of months, and has been brewing for a while, is the whole question of land appropriation. How do you think that will affect what it is that you guys are doing? I'd like for us to pick that up. We're just going for a short break. You're on Green4Life, here on Brand Live Online Radio.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za, an industry first in the world of internet radio. Not only are we an internet radio station, we are an internet radio platform for your brand. So why not expose your brand to potentially thousands of listeners and improve your customer relationships and brand equity with podcasts and live broadcasts? Be sure to check brandlive.co.za for more information. brandlive.co.za, harnessing the power of internet radio, blending into the surrounding suburbs of Melville. 27 Boxes is a realization of edgy design and practical implementation. A radical departure from the shopping malls of our generation, yet not a return to the high streets of our youth. 27 Boxes showcases the best of a shopping centre set in a garden, surrounded by the bohemian suburb that is Melville. 27 Boxes, shop, play, eat.
Good morning and welcome back to Green4Life. If you've just joined, we are talking to Dr. David Erald, who is the Divisional Environmental Manager for Sappi Forests. Doctor, just before the ad break, we were talking about the issue of land appropriation. That is the current buzz in South Africa at the moment. Are our planted forests going to be under threat?
It's a very interesting question, and a question that is difficult to answer from a political point of view. However, if we look at land use, I don't think it's that relevant who owns the land. It's what use the land is being put to. So, we're working very hard to make sure that our productive land stays productive. And as long as it stays productive and from our point of view is growing trees, then the threat is not that great. For the future of the country, we need to get economic development going, and we need to use our land responsibly, sustainably, but also to produce the kind of wealth we need to uplift people's livelihoods. So, I think one could get worried about who owns the land, but I think it's far more important to really concentrate on what the land is being used for, and make sure that people are qualified, trained, and are putting the land to good use.
One thing that I've noticed, just in line with what it is that we're talking about, is on the East Coast. When I traveled down from Mozambique into South Africa, I saw all of these patches, which looked like patches or clumps of forests being planted, and was told that these were actually individual farmers planting, having their own mini plantations. Is that one of the ways that you mention?
Absolutely. Those patches are actually what we call outgrowers or small growers. We have a very large program in Sappi called Kulisa, which started in the 1980s, I think around about 1989, where we had about 3 growers who grew trees. And since then, it's developed to such an extent now that we have over 2,000 small growers growing trees on their bit of land, the land that is allocated to them. It's a very viable cash crop for these people, and they're making money out of it. That area where in northern Zululand, for instance, has developed an enormously economically through the development of these plantations there, where people now can earn an income. People can, we're always very, very surprised at what people use their money for, and it's usually to send their children to university or to build houses. So it is really grassroots development, and it's part of the future to get people to use their land responsibly and start getting an income from them. From that land.
And that must be amazingly empowering when you're looking at all the kinds of skills that are being imparted from a business perspective, all kinds of stuff.
It is, absolutely. So that's the nice thing about the program, where we have a whole lot of training programs where people are trained in business, They're trained in contracting. We have extension officers going out and teaching people how to grow the trees. And forestry is actually a very versatile activity. It's not just planting a tree and waiting for it to grow. There's all sorts of other activities that go on around growing trees. There's the silviculture, looking after the trees. There's weed control, fire break management. People learn how to use equipment. There's planning that needs to be done, scheduling of when timber should be felled, and then the felling process and recropping. So we really do believe that people are upskilled in an enormous range of activities.
That actually sounds quite amazing, especially when you look at all of the different study areas. But speaking of that, we then immediately are pointed at the youth. How do you get young people, especially those living in rural areas, especially those who are being baited by what's happening in the big cities, by what's being shown on television? How do you get them to become interested in what it is that we've just been talking about, in forestry, in farming, etc.?
Yeah, we have recognized that is a key. And in fact, a lot of our growers, a couple of years ago, we noticed, the age of them were getting older and older, and forestry did not seem to be a very attractive profession or activity for the youth. We have programs now where we're trying very hard to get the youth involved. In fact, we have a program where we actually get volunteers from communities, youth, and we get them, we train them to interact with the community, to get, to talk to the community, to run programs, to teach, and to bring a vibrancy into the communities. The program's called Abatunchi, and it's been extremely successful, where the youth have actually taken it on and said, well, I now have a role to play in my community. I can be a leader. I can start teaching people other skills, whatever the skills are. And so in that way, we really are trying to get the youth involved. It is always a challenge, with people getting drawn by the cities, the idea that there's more opportunities in the cities. So we've just got to keep working at it.
From the perspective of us as users of pulp and paper products, what is it that you would want us to know from a forestry perspective?
Well, first of all, that a lot of people believe that if you use forest products, you're destroying a forest. That used to be in the old days, but now with sustainable forest management, that is not the case. Forest products are renewable, can be renewable, and if managed properly and responsibly, they are a great benefit. The benefits far outweigh the costs. So from a SAPI point of view, we'd like to tell listeners that all our plantations are certified to international standards, the Forest Stewardship Council standards, which is internationally the highest level one can get. They are certified to that, which kind of guarantees that they're responsibly managed. So, I'm not advocating consumption. Humans are great consumers of all resources, and we need to reduce
when
consumption.
Given the opportunity, we consume.
Yeah. So if we can do it responsibly, using the right products from the right sources that are sustainably managed, then it's a good thing. So that would be the first thing, I'd like people to know. The other thing is that along with our plantations, there's more than 100,000 hectares of conservation land that we look after, and we work with environmental groups and conservation bodies to make sure that these areas are managed properly. And so from a natural heritage point of view, our plantations also play a really important role. So those are two extremely important things that I think consumers should know, that plantations are not all bad.
Now, in terms of what I'd like to call a new SAPI, could you tell us some of your more innovative products that you've come up with?
Yes, some of the new innovative products are around different uses of paper. I'm not an expert on these things, but release paper is an important thing. If you look at a lot of the patterning, say on the dashboard of your car, or on the soles of your shoes or on handbags, that patterning is all done on paper and then imprinted onto the surface of whatever the thing the product is, and leaves the patterning. So that's an important product. The other speciality papers that are important. But from a more chemical point of view, there's a lot of products coming out of dissolving wood pulp. You can refine the fibers of wood to extreme levels. So the new buzzword is nanocellulose, where it's broken down into its kind of primary units. And these products go into all sorts of things like paints, chemicals, I believe cell phone screens. They're extremely strong, extremely versatile. And the nice thing is these products kind of replace a lot of the petrochemical products that were used in the past, which are not sustainable and are not renewable. So we're very excited about the future of wood products. We also, apart from the fibers, there's the rest of the wood, the lignins and all the products that come out of there. And we've got now plants alongside our mills where we extract sugars and other chemicals, so things like xylitol and chemicals that can be formed basis of many other products. So wood is extremely versatile, and there's many products that are going to come out of wood in the future.
Talking about the future, as we about to round off this interview, Doctor, where would you say is SAPI headed in terms of the new millennium?
Well, certainly SAPI is headed towards what we call a closed cycle, the biofuel cycle, or the bioenergy cycle, the bioproduct cycle, where we believe if we can manage our plantations correctly, we can get enough product, it's renewable, and if we can control the impacts of our mills and using new technologies, get what they call closed circuit mills, where we produce our own energy, it can be almost a kind of zero impact or external impact type business, where we produce goods that are extremely useful to all spheres of life, but are renewable and sustainable. So I think that's where SAPI is headed, with a whole lot of new and innovative products as well. So not just the big dirty paper mills producing mounds of paper. There's many important and extremely useful products that can come out of the new kind of mill that are environmentally much more controlled and acceptable.
On this International Day of the Forests and Human Rights Day, what would you want people, because today obviously will be largely people-focused, but in a spare moment, what did you want people to know about forests?
Well, first of all, that forests are extremely important to us. They kind of are the future. If we lose our forests, we lose basically the sustainability of humankind. They're extremely important in climate change. They carbon sinks. They sequestrate carbon. So if we do nothing else from a future of humankind, we've got to stop the destruction of our natural forests and start managing and conserving the forests appropriately. So that's extremely important. And you know, they're the lungs of the earth, really. So that's one thing. I think we also need to really consider what we consume as people, and you know, start working towards responsibility. Think about how we use stuff, whatever it is. Try and not be greedy and just consume it willy-nilly, and you know, eventually become a little bit more discerning on what products we do use. There's more and more information out there about where stuff comes from. So, you know, I think we all have a responsibility to become informed, to know about biodiversity, know about the climate around us, and know about products we're using and the impact we as an individual have.
Wonderful. That was Dr. David Erald telling us to consider what we consume, start being more responsible, and become informed on this International Day of the Forests. Dr. Everett, thank you very much for your time. Well,
it's only a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Well, that is it for now. This was Green4Life. I'm Erald Fillex. Until the next time, this was Brand Live Online Radio.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
Brand Live.
No doubt.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Brandlive.co.za is thought leadership radio. It's a new way to communicate your brand, your value, and what we think about your industry. Be a leader, be a voice, and we will help you shape your industry. Our radio platform is for thought leaders who want to share insights, businesses who want to create value for their databases, organizations who want to control their message, for those that drive change. Make your brand come alive on brandlive.co.za, harnessing the power of talk radio.